Hey, welcome. Today, we are diving deep into one of the biggest tests in fertility, the AMH test. We're going to break down what this test really tells you and what it doesn't, especially in light of some really fascinating new research that shows how much your results can be shaped by two big factors, your age and, believe it or not, your ethnicity. All right, let's jump right in. We've all heard that phrase, the biological clock. It can sound kind of vague, maybe even a little stressful, but what if you could get a real, actual snapshot of it? What if you could see the numbers behind the concept? Well, that's exactly what modern fertility testing tries to do, and it all starts with something called your ovarian reserve. So ovarian reserve is just the medical way of talking about the number of eggs you have left. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like a bank account for your eggs. You're born with a certain number, and over your lifetime, that number naturally goes down. The big question is, how do you check your balance?
And that's where this thing called anti-Müllerian hormone, or AMH, comes into play. It's a hormone that's made by the tiny follicles in your ovaries, which are the little sacs that hold your eggs. So, a simple blood test that measures your AMH level can give doctors a pretty good idea of your ovarian reserve. It's not the whole picture, but it's kind of like getting a bank statement for that egg account we were talking about. So, why do doctors lean on this test so much? Well, it really comes down to one thing: consistency. You see, unlike some other hormones, your AMH levels stay remarkably stable. They don't jump all over the place during your monthly cycle, or even from one month to the next. That stability makes it way more reliable, and it's especially helpful for predicting how well someone might respond to fertility treatments like IVF.
Okay, so we've got this idea of an egg bank account, and that the balance goes down over time. But the way it goes down, well, it's probably not what you're picturing. So let's dig into the first huge factor that everyone knows about: age. You'd probably guess that your AMH level starts super high when you're a teenager and then just slowly, steadily drops year after year, right? But the research shows it's actually way more dynamic than that. It is not a simple straight line going downhill. And here you can see that curve in action. Your AMH is actually 0, totally undetectable at birth. Then it rises and hits this long, high plateau that stays pretty stable until you're about 25. Then, after 25, that slow, gradual decline finally starts. But the really noticeable shift happens around age 34, when that decline gets steeper and much more consistent. So the big thing to see here is that it's not just one long slide. There are really distinct phases to it. All right, so age is obviously a massive piece of this puzzle, but it is not the only piece. And this is where the research gets really interesting, because it points to another critical factor, one that's been overlooked for a long time, that makes this whole picture way more complex: your ethnicity. So this is really the headline from the research. When scientists compared women of the exact same age, they found these huge differences between ethnic groups. For a long time, Caucasian women were sort of the default, the reference group in fertility studies, but the data is now showing that on average, Black and Hispanic women tend to have AMH levels about 25% lower than Caucasian women of the very same age. And when you dig in, it gets even more detailed. This table breaks it down a bit. You can see that 25% lower average for Black and Hispanic women, but then look at Chinese women. Their levels are often higher than Caucasians before age 25, but then they seem to fall to lower levels afterward. And research has even found big differences within what we think of as a single group. For example, one study found that women of Maya heritage had lower levels than other Hispanic women. It's incredibly nuanced. And the researchers who reviewed all this data really summed it up perfectly right here. It's a really clear statement that normal isn't just one single standard. It's highly variable, and the benchmarks we've been using for years might not apply to everyone. So naturally, this leads to the next massive question. Why? Why do these differences exist? The science is still pretty new here, but researchers are zeroing in on two main areas for potential answers. So what's actually happening here? What's driving these differences? Is it our genes? Is it our environment and our lifestyle? Is it some combination? Well, let's take a look at the clues that the research has turned up so far. Okay, so on the genetic side, scientists have found some pretty interesting connections. For example, specific variations in genes you might have even heard of, like the BRCA1 gene linked to cancer risk or the FMR1 gene related to Fragile X, have also been linked to lower AMH levels. And since these genetic variations pop up more or less frequently in different populations, that could be one piece of the puzzle. And then you have environmental and lifestyle factors.
Study after study has shown that things like a higher BMI, being a current smoker, or having a vitamin D deficiency are all linked to lower AMH. Now, what's crucial to note, as the source material points out, is that for a lot of complex reasons, these factors are more common in some populations than in others, which could absolutely be another contributing piece to this whole puzzle.
So, we've talked about age, we've talked about ethnicity, we've looked at some of the potential reasons why, but let's bring it all home. What does this actually mean for you when you're sitting in a doctor's office looking at your own results?
Now, this right here is maybe the most important takeaway of all. While your baseline AMH level, your starting number, can be very different depending on your ethnicity, the pattern of decline over time seems to be the same for everyone. That downward slope, that's a universal biological reality. We may all start on a different part of the hill, but we're all heading in the same direction.
So, what do you need to remember from all of this? First, context is everything. An AMH number by itself is meaningless without considering both your age and your ethnicity. Second, there is no universal normal. What's normal for one group of women might not be for another, even at the same age. Third, and this is so important, this test is just one tool in the toolbox. It is not a verdict on your fertility. And finally, the whole point of this is to empower you with knowledge, so you can have a much smarter, more personalized conversation with your doctor.
So in the end, that's what this is all about. This data is not about predicting your destiny. It's about making medicine more personal. It's about getting away from a one-size-fits-all model for understanding our own bodies. And so the real question to walk away with is this: how can you take this information and use it to start a better, more nuanced conversation about your own unique health journey?